Steve Andreas, Six Blind Elephants, page 194. When making any decision, you need to sort out which qualities are more important to you and ignore other less important ones. For instance, in buying a car, you may value safety, fuel efficiency, style, color, space, comfort, newness, acceleration, and low cost. But fuel efficiency is likely to reduce the acceleration. Comfort may affect safety. A particular style may reduce the space, and all of these may increase the cost of the car. If you don't know which of these are more important to you, it will be very difficult to make a good decision. Prioritizing in a hierarchy. Many important life decisions are far more complex than selecting a meal or buying a car. In order to make these difficult decisions about what is more important, it is useful to prioritize your values in some kind of hierarchy. When someone doesn't prioritize their values, they may not even consider other values when making a decision. They may see the tasty dessert or the pretty car and buy it without even thinking about how they will pay for it, or what else they could use that money for at some other time or place. They may not even consider all the other possible choices that might satisfy other values, which might be much more important to them. As people say, in the larger scope of things, or over the long term, the lasting troublesome consequences of impulsive decisions that often burden people with excess weight, debt, children, and other long-term obligations that they did not foresee because of the small scope that they used when deciding. The aggregate categorical scope exercise in the previous chapter can be particularly useful for helping someone attend to all the important elements in an important decision simultaneously, so that they can assess their relative importance. Social values. Conflicts between different values are something that all of us face, even when all our values are based solidly in our own experiencing. However, we also acquire many of our values from our parents, others, or the larger society that we grow up in, without having a personal, experimental base of examples for them. The advantage of this is that a child can learn the value of being careful while crossing a street so she or he doesn't get run over by a truck, without having to have that experience personally. Yet, even when society values are useful to us, we may experience a conflict. I might really like to have a car without paying for it, but it works better in the long run if I resist that desire. We acquire some of our values simply because they are generally accepted part of our culture or subculture, even though they aren't appropriate for us. Since different cultures have widely different values, the kindest thing that can be said is that they often disagree. Since different cultures disagree about what is important, at least some of these opinions must be arbitrary, and some of them are clearly destructive. Every society has some values that are not a very good fit for any human being. When someone accepts a social value that doesn't fit for them, they have to inhibit their own natural responses when they are in conflict with those values. They may even avoid or ignore their natural responses altogether, reduce in scope in order to avoid experiencing the conflict. Others may even feel good about their willpower in resisting forbidden impulses. Anorexia is an extreme example of how some kind of learned need to be thin can completely overwhelm urgent natural physiological needs for nutrition and health. Every culture also has values that directly conflict with each other. One of the 10 Commandments say, "Thou shalt not kill," and our society has laws against murder. Yet, other laws say that killing in self-defense is okay, that executing a convinced murderer is good, that killing in war is a duty to protect the homeland, etc. If you accept all these values and take them seriously, deciding what to do sometimes presents a very difficult problem. Because of all these factors, we often have conflicting values in a particular situation. And no matter what we decide to do, we may have to violate one or more of our values. These often causes uncertainty, hesitation, or inaction, unless we have a clear way of prioritizing, deciding which value are more important to us and which can be ignored if they come into conflict with more important ones. When you are in an emergency situation, usually it is very clear what needs to be done, and this can be very refreshing to someone who was wrestled with many conflicting values and had difficulty prioritizing them and deciding. On the other hand, the choices that someone makes in an extreme situation, like a battlefield, may be very different from the values that they previously had. The contrast between what they actually did and how they had thought of themselves adds additional conflict between opposing values. This contrast may not be fully apparent to a soldier in the context of war, surrounded by other soldiers undergoing the same kind of experience. This will be particularly true for someone who tends to go with the crowd, accept their values, and do whatever those around him are doing. But when he returns to civilian life, surrounded by others who haven't gone through that experience, the contrast between civilian life and what he did on the battlefield can become starkly evident. And since those around him now haven't had an experience of war, they can't offer him any understanding or support, so he is likely to feel very alone. Particularly difficult for someone who follows the crowd and have to try to sort out his confusion completely on his own. This is often a major aspect of the post-traumatic stress disorder suffered by many soldiers. They found themselves in extreme life or death situations that forced them to choose among conflicting values or even to violate several of them at once. What might have been an intellectual decision or lifeboat ethics in someone's living room become very real on the battlefield, and very difficult for them to sort out afterwards. Tormenting questions like, how could I have done that? What kind of person am I? Require self-exploration, understanding, and self-forgiveness. Values clarification. No matter how useful a hierarchy of values may be as a general guide, no hierarchy can accurately respond to the immense complexity of a human being in the larger scope of an even more complex physical and social world, all of which is continually changing. Some people try to figure out their values objectively, or try to deduce them logically from a set of hierarchical rules, principles, or scriptures. But those usually don't hold up very well in actual experience, because there are so many other factors that influence values in particular situation. If you don't know what your values are and you would like to clarify them, the best way is to put yourself into a specific experience, either in reality or in imagination. If you do this thoroughly, you have a chance to respond to it with all your different values and preferences, and find out what you decide to do, and whether you like the result or not. It is important to do this with a large scope in both space and time, because some experiences may feel good in a limited scope in space, but not in a wider and richer context, and vice versa. Other experiences may be unpleasant in the moment, yet they result in consequences that feel good later. An intelligent decision takes all these factors into account in order to find a balance that works well for you overall. When you do this, you can discover what your values are and how well they actually work for you, in contrast to rigidly following what you have been taught. You can find out if your values really are important to you, or if they are values that you simply accepted from others or society at large, without thinking about them or checking to see if they fit for you or not. Objective values. Some people speak of objective values, but the word objective is always a lie, because there is always an observer hidden somewhere. Even in the most careful and rigorously tested scientific knowledge, it is always so-and-so using the following assumptions, studying this and that, with the following methods and instruments, under the following conditions, using conventional measurements and mathematical rules, has found that Heinz von Forster has stated the fallacy of objective knowledge very succinctly. Very succinctly, yes. Heinz von Forster has stated the fallacy of objective knowledge very succinctly. It is syntactically and semantically correct to say that subjective statements are made by subjects. Thus, correspondingly, we may say that objective statements are made by objects. It is only too bad that these damned things don't make any statements. Very good. Logical and mathematical systems try to be objective and absolute, but they can only do this at the cost of ignoring specific contexts, a lot of important details, and they would work very well only if both we and the world were very simple and never changed. Even within the tremendously simplified artificial world of logic and mathematics, it has been proved that objectively is not possible Even within the tremendously simplified artificial world of logic and mathematics, it has been proved that objectivity is not possible. Objectivity is not possible. Gödel's first theorem says that any logical system which is not exclusively simple, that is, which at least includes ordinary arithmetic, can express true assertions, which nevertheless cannot be deduced from its axioms. And the second theorem says that the axioms in such a system, with or without additional truths, cannot be shown in advance to be free from hidden contradictions. In short, a logical system which has any richness can never be complete, yet cannot be guaranteed to be consistent. A logical system which has any richness can never be complete, yet cannot be guaranteed to be consistent. A.M. Turing in England and Alonzo Church in America showed that no mechanical procedure can be devised which could test every assertion in a logical system and in a finite number of steps demonstrate it to be either true or false. Alfred Tarski in Poland proved an even deeper limitation of logic. Tarski showed that there can be no precise language which is universal. Every formal language, which is at least as rich as arithmetic, contains meaningful sentences that cannot be asserted to be either true or false. Every formal language, which is at least as rich as arithmetic, contains meaningful sentences that cannot be asserted to be either true or false. Such a system of axioms has always been thought to be the ideal model for which all science strives. Indeed, it could be said that theoretically, since science is the attempt to uncover an ultimate and comprehensive set of axioms, including mathematical rules, from which all the phenomena of the world could be shown to follow by deductive steps. But the results that I have quoted, and specifically the theorems of Gödel and of Tarski, make it evident that this ideal is hopeless, for they show that every axiomatic system of any mathematical richness is subject to severe limitations, whose incidence cannot be foreseen and yet which cannot be circumvented. In the first place, not all sensible assertions in the language of the system can be deduced or disproved from the axioms. No set of axioms can be complete. And in the second place, an axiomatic system can never be guaranteed to be consistent. Any day, some flagrant and irreconcilable contradiction may turn up in it. An axiomatic system cannot be made to generate a description of the world which matches it fully, point for point. At some point, there will be holes which cannot be filled in by deduction, and at other points, two opposite deductions may turn up. I hold, therefore, that the logical theorems reach decisively into the systemization of empirical science. It follows, in my view, that the unwritten aim that the physical science have set themselves since Isaac Newton's time cannot be attained. It follows, in my view, that the unwritten aim that the physical science have set themselves since Isaac Newton's time cannot be attained. The laws of nature cannot be formulated as an axiomatic, deductive, formal, and unambiguous system, which is also complete. And if at any stage in scientific discovery the laws of nature did seem to make a complete system, then we should have to conclude that we had to got them right. And if at any stage in scientific discovery the laws of nature did seem to make a complete system, then we should have to conclude that we had got them right. Not got them. Okay, then we should have to conclude that we had not got them right. If there is no hope for complete objectivity in mathematics, there is probably no hope for it in human values and behavior, a much more complex scope. Yet, we still find mathematics tremendously useful. Whenever someone uses a cell phone, they are relying on very complicated mathematics without realizing it. And it works very dependably. Objectivity is a goal that can be approached but never reached. There will always be a small remnant of subjectivity. This is not to denigrate science. The many and widespread successes of science and technology result from being as objective as we can to avoid fooling ourselves. The knowledge developed by physics seems to be largely free of subjectivity. Matter and energy follow rules that are independent of someone's expectations, beliefs, or religion. However, those who propose the existence of unchangeable objective values usually don't base them on science, but on the ideas of prophets who wandered, loved, and fought in the deserts of the Middle East or elsewhere hundreds of or thousands of years ago. No matter how wise those prophets may have been for their time and context, they did not have access to the wealth of knowledge that humanity has developed during the intervening years, the vast majority of which has been developed only during the last 51-100 years. The knowledge base of humanity has more than doubled in my lifetime, and likely it has increased much more than that, and the pace is accelerating. Curiously, even those who follow the values set forth in religious texts would not use those texts as a guide for how to build a television set or an assault rifle. Those who fight in religious wars are quite willing to use the science embodied in jet planes, radar, and other weaponry to defeat their infidel enemies. Yet they are not willing to use the methods of science to examine the basis for their own beliefs and values. If the methods of science were applied to studying human values, we might hope someday to find values that were at least reasonably, if never completely, objective. Common values. We share many basic values with all other human beings because of our common physiological, social, and psychological needs. This commonality should be able to provide a basis for a shared set of values that would support us all in living together harmoniously. Yet, despite this common basis for values, people growing up in different cultures often have quite different values, and this can become a basis for conflict between people, both as individuals and as members of groups. Even a very basic need, like hunger, can be satisfied in a wide variety of ways, and the cooking of one culture may not appeal at all to someone brought up in another. Whether people